Welcome to Fiscal Integrity Group, your ticket to bookkeeping greatness.
Welcome to the 5-Year Crucible, building blocks to stardom. Hi, I'm Herb Holst. One of the things that our years in business as a contract bookkeeping company allowed us to do was to interact with and bear witness to many companies as well as many startup companies. It's mainly the startup companies that I'm interested in here. That being said, many established companies can benefit from your input into the management of their books for as long as you're with them and as long as they're in existence. Let's have a look at the world of the new or soon-to-be business owner and how you as the bookkeeping expert can help them in the early stages of their voyage. Once again, welcome to the 5-Year Crucible. The first 5 years are generally acknowledged to be the make or break years for most businesses. That's my use of the term 5-Year Crucible. Short of dramatic events in the company or in the marketplace, most of the companies that survive these first 5 years will generally continue being in business for as long as they care to or until they decide to sell. That said, vigilance still needs to be exercised as any bad decisions could still sink the ship even after the 5-year mark. New and small businesses are truly the backbone of the economy. Consider that many large companies are scaling back or even shutting down. The increased burden now falls to the new and smaller businesses to take up the slack. Having said that, many new and or small businesses will not survive the first 5 years. Now, this represents a lot of heartbreak to those owners and investors that had every intention of being involved in a successful company or enterprise. Statistics aside, the consensus is that of all the businesses that fail or cease to operate, most will do so in those first 5 critical years. The reasons for this are many, and not all of them are the fault of the owner or managers. There are many trials and tribulations faced by new businesses during this very important time. We will discuss what businesses have typically encountered and how they've dealt with it. Hopefully some of this insight will help you assist the owners and managers you are involved with as they try to avoid or at least deal with these challenges in a successful fashion. Let's explore the whole concept of starting a new business and what the new owners or managers need to confront and take care of. The whole premise of going into business means abandoning the safety net of the paycheck and committing personal financial resources, or those begged, borrowed, or whatever from whoever and wherever, to the cause. A lot is riding on the success of the enterprise. Now, for the new business owners, it means welcome to the world of sleepless nights and of stress levels previously unimagined. Not many new business owners go into business with a pocket full of their own cash or money lavished on them by family members or friends that just want to give them a leg up. In spite of all the reasons for not going into business, they've made the decision regardless, and they're going into business anyways. These are the men and women who have determined and fleshed out their vision, made the decision, and boldly gone where few others have gone before. Now, I say this because as a percentage of the population, those that go into business represent a very, very small group. Most people still prefer the safety of the paycheck and the steady, and I use this term loosely, the steady job. In this day and age, steady is becoming less relevant when we talk about ongoing secure employment. Notwithstanding, most people still determine that this is the best course of action to take and that it's the least stressful and risky for them. Many new business owners have taken out loans, borrowed money from family or friends, or taken on silent partners just to get them started. Once the business starts, the whole issue of cash flow now comes into play because it's their cash that the owners are playing with as often as not. Suppliers will only extend so much credit and employees will need to be paid regardless of whether customers have paid up. The planning, obtaining of cash to start things off, the setting up of the workplace, obtaining all of the furniture, fixtures, office equipment, inventory, all of this comes into play at this point in time. There are many things new business owners should be aware of and will no doubt have to deal with as they continue on this adventure. For now, it's all about giving birth to the beast. Often the new business owner will have to assume many of the responsibilities as well and wear many of the hats just because that's all they can afford in the very, very early going. Regardless, there's often a heightened sense of anticipation here, and hopefully the positive emotions will at least carry them through until the business is well underway. Notwithstanding, the progression beyond startup will go something like this. The initial focus will be on obtaining the first, second, and third sales order. For retail businesses, it involves making that first days, weeks, or months sales in sufficient quantity to carry the expenses. The thought that pervades your consciousness as a business owner is that you may have made the worst mistake of your life and that any of the monies that you've glommed together may be in the process of being wasted, and that's going to leave you with lingering debt. The whole intent is to have enough work come through the door so that you can make ends meet and to pay the bills and keep the ship afloat until it gains some traction. Few companies can expect to hit the ground running and start off with a healthy workload falling into their laps. Most often, this has to be aggressively pursued. Sales and the establishment of a committed and reliable clientele is very, very important at this stage of the game. Without the customers, nothing else matters. At some point, providing the business idea is viable to begin with, the focus will shift from getting enough work to getting the work out the door. Not only that, but getting it out on time, complete, and in an acceptable fashion. At this juncture, the flow of work is at least sufficient to keep everybody that's currently involved with the business very busy. A critical mass, if you would, has been reached in terms of bringing business into the door, and now the challenge is to get it all out the door, is to get the product or service out the door so that the client can be invoiced or can pay directly and keep the wheels of the business turning. A switching of stress, if you will, is what's happening here. At this time now, the decision may have to be made whether to bring on additional staff to split up the workload, and it has to be weighed carefully because, again, it's all about cash flow. How far does the owner wish to grow the business, and how much of the business will the market support is another thing that has to come into play here and be decided upon. The third focus will be on streamlining, organizing, and possibly even reinventing the business. The owner now has the advantage of a little bit of history to guide them in this regard, and now they can start to make these determinations. The adage of those that do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it may have to be taken into consideration as well, because here again, now you've got the history, make good use of it. Perhaps a great formula for the business is already in place. If that's the case, that needs to be acknowledged and the business needs to carry on using that formula. Now, if reinvention is the conclusion, then it should be done sooner than later before things get too far off the rails or the cash flow starts to diminish and the reinvention becomes impossible. The owner must not let emotions get involved in the game and undermine what may be a very, very viable business at this point in time. There are a number of things that you as the bookkeeper can do to help the process along during these first 5 critical years. To start with, just knowing what I've mentioned all through this presentation so far could be helpful or should be helpful. It should help you to understand what's going through the mind of the owner and the kind of mind games that can come into play, especially in the early going when all of this is happening. It'll hopefully help you to rationalize the craziness that may occur and to give you the insight to help the owner move the process along successfully. The upside is that if you've come into the business at the very beginning, you get to set up the books, and a lot of your own input will go into how these things get going and get rolling. Nothing like starting off with a clean slate. Just make absolutely sure that the setup of your books accurately reflects the needs of the business. It's important to properly set up all of the accounts, including and especially the ones that deal with the startup capital that has come into the company in the first place. There may be obligations to pay it back or to provide interest to the debtors. Keep this under control right from the start. Probably one of the most important things you can do for the business owners is to record, monitor, and report on the cash flow. Many companies and owners need this kind of information for the life of the company, but for new businesses, this is critical, especially in the first 5 years. For new owners, the information is not only vital, but it's critical in making sure that things don't fall off the rails very quickly without them even necessarily knowing about it. You are in a unique position to see the subtle dance between having enough money for the business to carry on and not having enough money to do so. The owners and managers need to see this as well in the timely and ongoing basis so they can react to things before it hits crisis mode. Since many new business owners and managers are not familiar with the bookkeeping or with business administration in general, you may need to coach them on what you need from them in order to do your job and what they can or cannot do. Oftentimes they don't really know this right off the bat, especially when it comes to managing the money and the business. This should be fairly straightforward for you if you are a bookkeeper at the top of your game. Things that would fall into this category are submitting of receipts for all business purchases. Again, the paperwork is vital and it's critical, and you need to have it in your possession so that you can use it and then store it. the keeping of a mileage log and the submission of a mileage log to you so that you can take care of that part of it in the posting of your transactions. The timing of your need for information, including reports, receipts, mileage logs, and so on, in order for you to process the books and make sure that you're in time for tax remittances. This is critical as well, and they need to be aware of your timelines and your time constraints. A payroll reporting system, if this is the case, that allows you to process the payroll on time as well. It's vitally important for staff that they be paid promptly and on time. That's what their livelihood depends on. If a payroll provider is involved, you need to make sure that you get them the information that they need to do their job in a timely manner. There may be a need for assistance in sorting out the banking processes, including online banking. And also, if it's the case, to provide assistance with the sales or the point of sales techniques and how all of that works. Interpretation of reports that you've generated from the books. Again, this is something where you can really bring your skills to play, and that the reports will be of use to them as they manage the company, and it may be that they just need some assistance from you in how to interpret the numbers. And last but not least, just some office setup in general, as you may be more familiar with that than they will. Now, if you've come into the business somewhere into the first 5 years, you can still help with optimizing a lot of the processes in collaboration with the owners and managers. Now, just because things are in place doesn't necessarily mean that they're optimal. Working on this will not only make things easier for the owner or manager, it'll also make things easier for you as well. The books must keep up with the business, especially as the business evolves, and this is your domain. All in all, the first 5 years of a business are an exciting and often stressful time for the owners and managers. Knowing this, and with the insight and guidance that you can provide, you can help them through this very critical time. Your focus should be on being part of the solution, and all the very best of luck with this. Thank you for watching. I'm Herb Holst. We'll see you next time.
Fiscal Integrity Group, your home for the advancement of bookkeeping and bookkeepers.